Oh, that's recording.
It is indeed.
That's cool. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming to 1500ESPN.com. That one. He's Matthew Coller. I'm Derek Wetmore. We're going to talk to you about the Minnesota Vikings, the 5-0 Minnesota Vikings, as I believe we predicted on last week's Vikes Insight video.
I think we did, yes.
No big deal or anything. Much like the Houston Texans, no big deal at all. On this video, we're going to talk about Rick Spielman, his sort of mid-season comments where he assesses the team. We're also going to talk a lot about Sam Bradford, the quarterback, and a little nugget on Mike Zimmer, too. Some interesting stuff. Before we get going, please subscribe to the video. I'm not going to ask you again.
I think you will.
I probably will.
I think you're going to ask
I
again.
probably will. Do it anyways. We appreciate it. Our numbers are growing, and it's fun to see. It's fun doing these videos for you guys. So, Matthew, you sat in with General Manager Rick Spielman and other media members this week about it was kind of like a State of the Union, right? State of the team. What was the biggest takeaway for you? And it sounds like there are maybe varying opinions, too, on how to interpret exactly what Spielman says, as always.
Yes, that is true. Well, there were a lot of things that he talked about for almost a half an hour, so we could run down all the different things. But the one that I was specifically interested in is the two guys that Rick Spielman drafted with the first and second pick for the Vikings this year have played less than 40 snaps the entire season.
Yeah.
Now, with Mackenzie Alexander, I think he's doing a nice job. He looked good in preseason, and there's just too much talent in the secondary for him to get much time. Another first-round pick in Trey Waynes.
Sure.
Also, Xavier Rhodes has been fantastic, and Terrence Newman, we know how good he is. So there hasn't been that many opportunities. And Captain Munnerlyn, by the way, I think maybe the most underappreciated player in the secondary this year. I think he's been very, very good against those slot wide receivers, slowing them down. So, okay, no problem. Mackenzie Alexander, he's learning. But Laquon Treadwell, I specifically asked Rick Spielman about Laquon Treadwell and why he hasn't played very often. And his answer was, well, we like that rookies get brought along slowly because we have so much depth, which is true. And I'm not going to say that Rick Spielman is not telling the truth there, that it is better for any rookie to get more experience sitting behind really good players. The problem with that, though, is that Stefon Diggs was out this last week, and Jarius Wright, who had been inactive, and it looked like really wasn't even a part of the team.
Yeah, basically.
All of a sudden gets 40-something plays, and Laquon Treadwell still sits. Cordarrelle Patterson, who we thought career might be on the edge here in Minnesota, and all of a sudden he has become a big part of the offense, and not the first-round pick. And again, the follow-up to that was pretty much the same answer. Well, it's good for him to be coming along.
Sure.
Oh, he looks good in practice on the practice tape, and maybe he is progressing, but we've gotten to the point where it probably is a little bit of a concern that the first-round pick can't get himself in the game even when Stefon Diggs is injured.
Let me ask you how much Kyle Rudolph plays into this, because in my opinion, at least through training camp, the way I saw Treadwell was, all right, even if he comes along slowly, he is sort of one of those big body, to use a cliche, red zone targets.
Yes.
Hey, he can go get, if it's in traffic, if it's fade routes, anything like that. Treadwell has the sort of build that makes it difficult to defend for undersized cornerbacks that, hey, this is a guy, at the time, Teddy Bridgewater can take advantage of, now that Sam Bradford can take advantage of in the red zone. Kyle Rudolph has really filled that role really well, in my opinion, in my estimation. How much of that plays into Laquon Treadwell? And secondly, are you being too cynical by saying that Adam Thielen and Cordarrelle Patterson are not just having a fairly good run of things right now, and the Vikings maybe don't need Treadwell?
I would say it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B. With Kyle Rudolph, he's taken on that role really well in the red zone. And Cordarrelle Patterson even made a great catch against the Houston Texans. Everyone has done their job. I mean, I read a stat the other day that there's been one dropped pass. One. By the Minnesota Vikings this year. And I can't even think of when that was. Was it a Stefon Diggs?
Adam Thielen? I'm surprised that it's only one.
I can't think of another drop pass, which is pretty amazing, and maybe it helps Sam Bradford with his completion percentage.
I'm going to say that Adam Thielen's dropped a pass, and I think Charles Johnson also has. So I'm surprised.
It was Johnson.
I'm surprised that there's only one. So anyways.
Now maybe there was another one that was catchable and it wasn't ruled officially a drop. But the point is that, like what you're saying, Kyle Rudolph included, the weapons have been very good. Maybe even better than we expected them to be, outside of Charles Johnson, who has been mostly non-existent outside of two very good catches against the Giants. Still, you had an opportunity this week to get Laquon in the game and see a little bit of him and use him a little bit, especially in a blowout.
Yeah.
And he still wasn't used. I mean, that game is over. If you look at the win probability chart, that game is over by the second quarter. You're up 24-0 and still can't find a way to get Laquon Treadwell in the game. We are getting toward, all right, maybe there's a little concern there that he is not catching on to what they want to do offensively, or isn't fitting in, or isn't physically where they need him to be.
Yeah.
Any of those things, but those answers aren't coming to us, really. We've gotten a little bit of hint about the route running from Mike Zimmer, and that's been really about it. And I could buy into that he just hasn't connected with the offense yet so far. But again, wide receiver is a position where we've seen many guys in their rookie and early careers step in and have success.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I'm curious to know, maybe just changing gears actually, because Sam Bradford, in my opinion, doesn't really factor into the Laquon Treadwell conversation. I was thinking, when you mentioned blowout, I'm thinking, well, yeah, but it's still nice for the Vikings and beneficial for Bradford to continue to execute the rest of the game plan, even if the game is over, and even if you're just sort of sitting on the lead and trying to kill some of the clock. It's good to have Bradford going through those reps. Now, he wants to do it with the A players. He wants Kyle Rudolph still on the field. He wants Cordarrelle Patterson in whatever capacity, Jerick McKinnon. That would make some sense to me. But from everything I've seen from Sam Bradford, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I've been blown away. I know we thought last week, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago, that you don't think he's far exceeding expectations, but my expectations anyway have been blown out of the water by some of the throws and the overall capabilities of Sam Bradford since he joined the Vikings.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been saying it here on 1500ESPN.com. One of the first articles that I wrote of the season when they made that trade was Sam Bradford is better than you think. He has always been better than you think. And actually, Jake Long said it the other day in his initial interview when he first got here, was signed. He was like, we knew he was going to be really good even when I was with the Rams. The guy just had a tough break and a couple of injuries that really set him back. And last year he was really excellent. Rick Spielman talked about that too, going back and watching those games on film and saying, you know what, this guy is probably hitting the prime of his career right now. And that game against Houston, there's an argument that that's his best career game. It was his highest rated game of any with more than 20 passes. He had some game that was a little higher where he was 16 for 20. But any game where he was throwing the ball more often, that was his best game. And I thought we saw him use all the weapons brilliantly and his entire skill set, from his smarts to his detail. Something that I noticed with his detail was the smallest little shoulder fake was able to freeze a corner on Adam Thielen's first touchdown.
Yeah.
And then he makes a perfect pass. He gets the ball out quickly, it's accurate, it's strong. And so it shows like not only his attention to detail, but his physical skills as well, and his smarts to read that play and set up the cornerback like that. He is showing everything that would make you draft a quarterback number 1 overall.
Yeah, you mentioned in your All-22 film review that stat about this might be Bradford's best game ever. I think that you could argue you could still see a lot of that kind of performance for the rest of the season for the Vikings. They have Philadelphia coming out of the bye. Obviously, they're off this weekend. And after that, Matthew, the Vikings have a pretty clean slate to kind of run things in the NFC North. They're very strongly in control in this division right now. And given some of the defenses that the Vikings are going to see over the next 5-6 weeks, Bradford might be in line for another couple of great games in the coming weeks, months.
I think what you asked yourself is, are these performances repeatable?
Sure.
Is what he's doing, can he do that week after week after week? Now, I know Philadelphia has a really good defense, so that is going to be a big challenge.
The Bradford Bowl.
However, the Texans had a really good pass defense.
Yeah.
And he had his best game of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, he was using the whole field. I included in my article a chart of just his short passes, and he was throwing short passes over the middle, to his left, to his right, executing all parts of the offense. And you know, the credit also deserves to go to offensive coordinator Norv Turner and whomever else and company is helping them design the offense, because I saw the little nugget come up on TV, the keys to the second half. A lot of the keys to the second half are just like, right?
Yeah.
But whoever it was, I don't know who was broadcasting it, whatever channel, who was broadcasting it, was Spiro Ditas and the other guy, Solomon Wilcots.
Yeah.
Give them credit for this, because they put up on the screen that the Vikings needed to continue their offensive creativity. sounds a little bit like a cliche, but the creativity of the offense, using Cordarrelle Patterson to his strengths.
Yeah.
Matt Asiata had a couple of big catches in that game that we sort of forgot about because it was so dominating.
Yeah.
And I just think that Bradford is utilizing everyone to what they do best, which he should be able to continue to do.
Cordarrelle Patterson's been an interesting emergent for me. Someone who, for all intents and purposes, has been written off in this town, at least in the media, as he's a gadget guy. Gadget, he can do some wildcat, which we've seen, that's interesting. He can be a bubble screen, and he's a kick returner. And that's about it. Well, now the Vikings are using him as the gunner on the punt team, which is interesting. He's been sensational in that role.
Yes.
He's really showing off his athleticism. Still, it's a lot of bubble screens, but they're actually having him run some routes as a wide receiver now, too. I wrote in my 10 Thoughts column this week for 1500ESPN.com. Cordarrelle Patterson's kind of back. He's not going to be a superstar, probably, with the Vikings, but this is more of the guy that they probably expected when they drafted him all those years ago, traded up a huge bundle to get back into the first round to get Patterson, but he's showing to be a viable offensive weapon, and I credit Patterson with that, but you know who else I credit maybe equally, possibly more? Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford is really finding a way to get Patterson involved in the offense, too.
I think that him and also their design trying to actually use him again. And it looks like, to me, it's the organizational philosophy to take... In hockey, they would call them one-dimensional players, right? Oh, he's just an offensive guy. He's just a defensive guy. Well, a lot of the players on this Vikings team are one-dimensional. Daniil Hunter's a good example. Tom Johnson's a good example. Guys who do one thing really well. They rush the passer. Or one thing really well. Shamar Stephen stops the run, stuffs the middle. That's all he does. So what do? They use him to their strengths. They use him in those situations.
It's funny how that works.
And right, yeah, I know, but a lot of teams don't want that. A lot of teams might prefer guys that do everything sort of average instead of one thing really well. And with Patterson, they've gotten the ball in his hands on those short passes, and every once in a while letting him go down the field just to show other teams that he can do it. But also, to your point with Sam Bradford, he's got to have the arm strength, he's got to get it out quick enough, and he's got to make the right read to get it in Patterson's hands. And one of the plays that he made the other day, it's like a 9-yard gain, no big deal, but it sets you up with second and short. It looked to me like it was clearly a running play that Bradford checked out of because the cornerback was playing way off of Cordarrelle Patterson, and all he did, took the snap, fired it out to Patterson right on the money, and they get 8 or 9 yards. And using Patterson in that way, to me, is effective and is kind of salvaging his career.
Cannot finish a Vikings Insight video without talking about Mike Zimmer. I had a thought this week, and it's interesting, and we're going to see this play out throughout the NFL. I'm not going to be the first to have originated this thought, but it's out there, and I guarantee it's going to happen. Over the next 2, 3, 4 years, you're going to see NFL defenses try to do exactly what Mike Zimmer's Vikings are doing right now. It sounds weird. You worked in Buffalo for a number of years, covered the Bills. I've covered Minnesota since the Leslie Frazier era. I know it's not going back that far, but trust me, that defense was a lot different than this one we're seeing. It's really weird to me to think about what we're seeing right now and sort of the pieces that Zimmer's moving around the field and some of the pressures that he's giving teams. Those are going to start to be replicated, and you're going to start to recognize that in other NFL defenses. Oh, hey, that's the Vikings concept. That's what Mike Zimmer does. It's just a weird thought to me that that's going to happen.
I would say yes and no. The yes is, it's a copycat league, everybody. Subscribe.
I'm not sure that's when we want to ask people.
It is, but I mean that's right though. Like if you see Rex Ryan was in Buffalo, and what Rex Ryan was doing with the Ravens and the Jets was copied a lot throughout the league as they went forward.
Sure.
And Rex Ryan took a lot of his influence from Dick LeBeau and your zone blitzes and stuff like that. So I mean it all builds on itself. But here's the thing that Mike Zimmer has. I think he's got creativity, but he's got so much talent.
Players, yes.
If he did not have... When I watch other teams play, each week I do a feature on the opponent that's coming up, and I see the other team's defense and things like that. I see a lot of very basic nickel defenses as the base, which has changed a lot. But the other thing that I see is you don't have Harrison Smith.
Right.
You do not have Linval Joseph.
Don't have Anthony Barr.
Though, Harrison Smith, I'll just keep saying it, is one of the absolute MVPs of the entire NFL this year. He is one of the best players in the league. And because he has so much talent, where he could guard wide receivers, he could blitz, he could shut down the run, he could do all that, It's the same way that Pittsburgh used Troy Polamalu all over the field and forcing teams to beat that guy. Good luck beating our best player. We're going to load up everywhere else. We're going to leave him alone. And if you can beat him, good luck.
Yeah.
And no one has been able to do that. And that's the type of talented player that I think you need to run what Mike Zimmer is running, which there aren't too many of those guys.
Fair enough. That'll do it for this week's Vikings Insight video. He's Matthew Coller. I'm Derek Wetmore. I believe he asked you to subscribe. I got a link on the video, so it's easy. You got no excuse. The Vikings are off this week, so we'll see you next week as the Vikings try to go 6-0 in the Sam Bradford Bowl. Plenty to follow on 1500ESPN.com. Please check that out as well. We thank you so much for your support, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.